Hey there, it's Rob Stewart here, and I'm going to be teaching you today on this training how to land your first high cash flowing property deal within 90 days without having to use any of your own cash using the AAA method. Now look, over this webinar, I'm going to be speaking pretty fast. That's because we've got a lot to cram in, and I'm also super passionate about the subject and creating freedom, control, and choice using what I believe to be the best asset class in the world, bar none. And I can promise you that if you hang around for the next 60 minutes or so, I'm going to teach you a step-by-step system that you can use regardless of your current resources, how much time you have to start building your own high cash flowing property portfolio and land your first deal within 90 days. And that means you don't have to have buckets of your own cash. You don't need to spend hours, days, weeks, and months flogging yourself around the networking circuit and living on social media. And look, you certainly don't have to slog your guts out viewing every single property that comes onto the market, because I can assure you that all of that stuff just doesn't actually work and is going to make your life super hard anyway. So how exactly do you start a property business from scratch and land your first deal without any of your own money within 90 days? And that's literally starting with a blank sheet of paper. So we're going to use this thing called the AAA method, which, as it sounds, is 3 steps. And I'm going to go through it on this webinar over the next 40 minutes or so. So look, if you take this information, you're going to be able to use it to generate not just a legacy for you and your family by creating wealth, but more importantly, we're going to use it to create and compound cash flow. So your income is always going up and giving you what I believe to be the most important asset you can have. That's time, freedom, and choice. So look, if you pay attention as we unpack this method, you're going to be getting results like Ollie and Alicia, who joined my mastermind when they started in property but hit a brick wall of momentum. So after buying their first investment property with all the liquid funds they and their family had, they couldn't work out how to get to the next level. So using the AAA method, they were able to build a proper property business. They started to attract investors, and now they charge over £10,000 a pop to source for other clients, which all gets reinvested into their own business. And look, they've literally got a waiting list of new joint venture clients waiting to work with them. And yes, this is what I'm going to teach you over the next 45 minutes or so, so please do pay attention. And look, I know it's not easy to stay through an entire webinar, especially when you've got so many distractions around you. So to sweeten the pot a little bit, I'm going to be giving you a couple of gifts. Number one, I'm going to send you the slides to this training so you can go through, you can look at it in your own time, you can unpack it, and you can get all the infographics we're going to share. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to send you my deal analyzer tool. This is something that I've created over 10 years of analyzing deals. You can use it to immediately start to appraise property deals straight after the training, which is going to help you to implement the method I'm going to teach. This is something that usually only my paid mentoring and coaching clients get. So I hope you take it and use it to good effect, right? I want you to use it to start finding deals that actually work and create massive passive income every single day without having to buy a lemon of a deal. Now, the main thing that I'm going to be teaching you, the one thing that I'm going to be teaching you over this training, right, is the thing that is fundamental to success in property in the current market. And that's important. We're talking about the current market. Markets change. But this is going to work for you even if you've got none of your own cash, even without having to view hundreds of duff properties, right? I don't want you to spend your whole time, hours every day viewing every property that's in your area trying to find a deal. Look, I say this with with some passion that it seems to be the thing that people are talking about doing still, and the gurus out there are still telling you to do this, right? They're telling you need to go out and play the numbers and view hundreds of properties, and I want to show you why you absolutely do not need to use this approach, right? And actually, why you categorically shouldn't do it anyway, because it's going to trash your reputation in the local area. Look, I'm going to show you how you can get that first high cash flowing property deal in 90 days without having to spend hours slogging around the networking circuit, without having to flog yourself on social media, without having to sit down and have a million cups of coffee with people who just want to take your time, those time vampires. Because if I'm honest, most people in the property world are absolutely working their socks off, right? They're being busy when they don't need to be by hustling and grinding. And, I can't tell you how frustrated I get when I go on social media and I see people who are just started and they're talking about how they're trying to train themselves to sleep less so they can cram more work hours in. Look, this is crazy. It's totally missing the point of property, because property is all about creating hands-free income streams that you can compound over time and give you freedom. It's not about hustling and grinding. I can give you hundreds of business models if you want to work 20 hours a day that will achieve that for you, but it's not the point of property. Look, Over the lockdown period alone, I've used the AAA method to buy these two properties, which between them are worth over £1 million, and between them rent roll at over £10,000 per month. And I've done it without speaking to a single estate agent. I've only left the house once, okay? And this is how property should be. Now, I know what I've just said is a huge claim, but when we break it down, it's really very achievable. And to prove that to you, I want to cut through a lot of the lies that you've been probably told about property. Now, I know that's probably not entirely fair because they're not actually lies, okay? They're probably just things that are not going to work for you because of a lot of the individual strategies that are taught by the gurus are actually things that have worked for them based on their individual circumstances, resource, and location. But just because they've worked for somebody else does not mean they're going to work for you, right? And when we understand this, it really starts to explain why you're not finding deals that actually work for you, right? No matter what you do, no matter how many times you do Facebook Lives, you can't actually find the money. Why nothing you do seems to actually be working for you. Or look, maybe even why you haven't even started your property business yet. We get a lot of people come to us and they say they've not started because it's so overwhelming, it's hard to understand, and look, the figures are so big. You know, the questions that go through your mind are, what strategy should I be using? What area should I be buying in? How do I actually find and structure those deals in the first place? And how do I find the money to purchase them? I know it's really overwhelming. Look, I totally get it. I've been there. I've been exactly where you are now. And so I'm going to give you this step-by-step system, which is going to simplify and demystify the whole process for you. Now, look, before we get into this, I don't want to spend too much time talking about me. I'm not going to be giving you some fake BS rags to riches story, right? You've probably heard plenty of those. Right? I'm not going to be tear-jerking you into, trying to take some fake action. But I do think that some context is important. So you know that it's going to work for you, so you can see the journey that I've been through. And just like you, I've started from scratch and ended up from nothing, doing over 8 figures worth of property transactions with none of my own money, and built a portfolio that does provide financial freedom. Look, before I got into property, I spent 12 very happy years in the Air Force. I was flying these things. This is me flying a Tornado on the south coast in some air show somewhere. I can't remember exactly where I was. I think it's Southend or something like that. And I loved it, right? It was a great job. It was a high performance job. I was at the top of my game. I was earning an average salary. Definitely wasn't in the gutter. But the big thing, right, about being in the military was I really started feeling as I came out of my 20s into my 30s that I had a total lack of control, freedom, and choice in my life. And I felt I had to make a change because it was almost bursting out of me to take control of my life, right, and get on a different path. So I ended up leaving the Air Force at the beginning of 2012. I left without any pension, okay? I was anxious about the future. I had no savings to speak of. And actually, I thought I was just going to walk into a job in the airlines, which at the time we're in deep recession and nobody is recruiting, okay? So I wasn't able to work, find employment. And all of a sudden, that blanket of security, that thing that I thought I'd have my whole life in a career had gone, okay? It had all been taken away. And for the first time, I felt anxious, right? I felt worried about the future. And I knew that I had to do something, right, to replace that. And so I spent the next year or so learning everything I could, right? I hoovered up knowledge. I started investing in myself, okay? And I wanted to figure it all out. And over the next 10 years, I built up a sizable portfolio in the Northwest. I kept on doing bigger and bigger deals. Here's a picture of a new build development deal we're doing, okay, where we do, as well as investing, we do developing as well. But this wasn't a straight line, okay? And even though I was successful, I kind of fell for what a lot of the gurus were saying and imagined I'd just have that passive life, the images they put on when it's somebody on a beach drinking a pina colada or something, which is so far from reality because as my own business grew, I realized I'd just replaced one job for another. And I had to work out a way to actually run this business, grow this business without being a slave to it. And so some years ago, I set out to systemize the whole thing, okay? And at the same time I did that, actually, the property market started to shift as well. So look, I'll be honest, when I started out in 2011, it was much easier to find property deals. We were in recession times, right? Nobody, wanted to buy. Everybody was selling. But over the last few years, the market has changed beyond recognition, both because it's become hotter, but because the government's changed a lot, right? The whole legislation around property has changed a lot. And so I had to work out how to adapt to the new normal because when I started, right, I was spending all day, every day, doing what the gurus tell you to do now, right? I was out there viewing loads of properties. I was going to these networking events, having the life sucked out of me. I was trying to find money and reeking of desperation, literally trying to find more cash. And even when I was able to buy property and I was buying property, you then had to, work out to deal with builders and deal with all these tenants. And it just started becoming all consuming. It certainly wasn't that glossy brochure image that the gurus were suggesting and pimping out. But I finally worked out a way, right, to greatly reduce the amount of time needed in my business to run a much smaller but higher quality portfolio that actually ends up spitting out much higher amounts of profit on a recurring basis every single month. And that's what I've spent the last few years encapsulating into my AAA method, which I want you to view as a methodology, okay? It's not a strategy. I'm not going to teach you one strategy, one shiny penny that I think is going to make you rich, right? I'm going to give you a methodology that anybody can use to do the same, regardless of your resources, right? Rather than that specific strategy that's only going to work for a handful of people who fit the bill. So this is the story of why I was an extremely successful investor, but it didn't give me that lifestyle I've been promised by the gurus, and why I basically ripped it all up and I've rebuilt my property portfolio. Because much of the stuff that's being taught right now just doesn't work for many reasons, right? And it ends up creating a liability that's going to suck your time away. After doing this, I can now spend 95% of my time on either strategic growth, investing or running other businesses, and also time with my family and my life, rather than 95% of my time spent fighting fires and making no money. And look, I want to show you the sort of stuff we're doing now. Okay, so rather than going for, a quantity of property and running around being busy, this is just one property in the portfolio. You can see every month in, month out, right? Just over $2,500 hits the bank account every single month. And this involves no work from me. There's no management involved. Okay, there's no risk, there's no voids, there's no maintenance. It's all covered by the tenant. I'll talk to you about how we do this, okay? Just sit there and imagine for a moment almost 30 grand a year coming in on autopilot. Here's another property in the portfolio every single month. You can see this one is just over 4.5 grand a month. Every single month coming in. Again, there is zero management. I have no time input to this. I don't find the tenants. I don't manage the property. I don't even pay for the insurance on the building, okay? The tenant pays for all of this. Any damage that happens is sorted. This drops in like clockwork every single month. I just want you to visualize that for a moment. What would it mean for you if you had £2,000, £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 a month per property, right? This is not total portfolio, this is per property, dropping in every month without your time input. Just ask yourself how that would change things for you. But look, I discovered this the hard way. This was not a straight line. I did not just wake up one day and had all this solved, okay? I've spent tens of thousands in training. Okay, myself. I've spent hundreds of thousands in mistakes. I'll tell you over a beer sometime how a builder of mine once ran away with 30 grand of my cash and left me with a property that had 35 points of non-compliance when the building regs guys came in, so I could refinance it. It took me another 20 grand to sort those things. And it's not even about the money, right? The thing that still is painful when I think of, experiences like that at the time, the wasted time, the emotion, the stress that you go through. Okay, I've done this the hard way. You get to cheat and get the easier. I'm going to tell you how to get it right first time. I want to give you the step-by-step process that you can use to do the same and avoid these costly mistakes. I'm going to teach you what to do, what not to do, what to stop doing. So by the end of this, you've got that step-by-step plan to get started in property and land your first deal without having to have millions of pounds in the bank and also doing all the stuff that the gurus are telling you that quite frankly sucks, right? It's going to drain the life out of you and it doesn't work anymore anyway. So let's go through. I want to share with you some of the hard ways that people are using right now to build their property portfolios. This is one of the biggest one, right? This is one of the biggest mistakes that people make, copying what the gurus are doing. Because look, there's plenty out there, right? And they're awesome and they get us pumped up and they show some amazing things. But very often the things they're saying and doing and teaching is because it works for them. It does not mean it's going to work for you. And like I said earlier, I'm not saying that what they doesn't work, but there's so many factors that go into being successful in property. What resources you start with, where you live or operate in the country, what your existing network is. And so it's almost impossible to just pick a strategy that gurus teaching and try and make that work for you. A lot of the gurus, they've got resources, for whatever reason, that you couldn't even imagine. Now, look, I'm not a guru, I'm just like you. And I'm probably just, a few years ahead of you. I'm definitely not somebody, you're not going to see me taking pictures of myself in front of the latest deal, draped over my Ferrari, strategically placed, with a big fat cigar in my mouth. I know that you're probably just like me, somebody who got started with very little. In fact, I talked about how I was winning the RAF, and when I decided to leave it, I literally had nothing in terms of savings, right? I left my pension, I had nothing in savings, the pay was average in the military. I told you that when I left, I thought I'd be joining the airlines. I actually just spent all my resettlement, best part of 10 grand, in getting my licenses. But when I left, we were mid-recession and nobody was hiring. So there I was. I was a skilled pilot. I couldn't find employment. I was forced into finding a different route. Now, what I did manage to do was find a short-term contract with a defence contractor. But I can't tell you how much I hated that job. I was getting up at 5 every morning. I was commuting an hour and a half each way. And honestly, I remember vividly in one evening looking in the mirror and just screaming after my boss, who had no idea what he was doing, was telling me to do stuff that I've been doing for 12 years and was the expert at, right? And I remember sitting there on my bed trying to work out how to change my life and get out of the trap that I found myself in. I'd given up my pension. My first priority was how to replace that. And if you're like me, you probably worry about the future and making sure you've got something in place to provide for you if you can't work when you retire. And that's why I started out in property. But look, going back to the point, at the start, when I started, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I was totally overwhelmed by the whole process, and I had nothing but doubts running through my head. And look, if you're on this webinar right now, you're probably in the same place. You're probably trying to work it all out. You're probably feeling overwhelmed, or you're going on social media and you're listening to everything that the gurus are saying, and it's just causing so much stress in your mind of how to do things, or maybe you're copying what they're telling you to do and it's just not working for you. Okay, I've been there, I've done that myself. So what I want to stress is, unless you've got the same resources as the people that you're following and listening, right, I suggest you stop what they're trying to do, because by doing that, it's going to be a very hard way to build your property business. And that brings me to hard way number 2, okay, which is getting out there and just playing the numbers. And I say viewing 100 properties every single month. What I mean is just being busy and hustling and grinding. When I got started, I researched, I listened to those gurus, I got sucked into that narrative they gave me, which was to play the numbers and see everything on the market, and speak to every estate agent and just basically be busy, right? I found myself trying to book 5, 6, 7, 8 viewings every single day across multiple agents, and all of a sudden my life was consumed with it. I can't tell you how difficult it is, trying to schedule, diarize appointments across multiple agents. I was, traveling miles between every one. I was, it was horrible. It was exhausting, and trying to coordinate it was a logistical nightmare. At the same time, I was trying to build up these relationships with the estate agents. But here's what I found out very quickly trying to do this, okay? When you're starting up, and when you try and view all of these properties and you try and develop relationships with the agents, and you do what those gurus are telling you, and you're putting out all these crazy offers on the properties, and you're hoping that one of them, just gets used, it's actually going to damage your reputation with them. Unless you've actually got the ability to move forward and follow through on those immediately, right, you're seriously quickly going to be filed in that dreaded estate agent waster bin. I can't tell you how many people I've seen, right, who have destroyed their reputations with agents by just doing what they've been told to do. They're just following the scripts, right? But it's just not working. Look, estate agents are not stupid. They see new wannabe property investors walk into their offices every single day with the same scripts, trying it on. After buying property for a decade now, I know some of these agents really well. Right, we speak about it and they kind of laugh to me a little bit about what they're seeing, and they say, they can see it a mile off. But the good news is, right, you don't have to do any of this, right? There's plenty of very simple systems and techniques that we can use to laser into that and find the nail in the haystack, right? To find those few properties where you can land yourself the sweet deals. And this is all about quality, not quantity. You should not be looking to keep growing for the sake of it, to build this expansive, massive portfolio. We should be looking for those gems out there and laser focus them on using systems I'm going to talk about later. So when you do it, it's going to free up your time to focus on those strategic elements of your business, which is building your network, developing partnerships, and landing investors. Okay, and this takes me to the third hard way that people use to grow their business, right? Slogging the networking circuit and social media, building your brand. Okay. I want you to stop doing it, right? Oh my gosh, everybody is out there flogging themselves on the circuits, right? They're spending their whole time on social media, trying to build a brand, doing Facebook Lives, putting 10 things on your story every day. And people do it because they've been told to do it, right? You've been told to go to 2 networking events a week. You've been told to document everything you do on social media. You've been told to upload videos every day, but here's the reality. Look, I'm not saying that networking and building relationships is not important. It absolutely, totally is. But the reality is that most people are doing it in totally the wrong place, okay? The effort is going into the wrong places. So the majority of property networking events and forums are just glorified entry gates into the sales funnels of the big training companies. And you're basically putting all your energy into building networks in a group of people who are in exactly the same position that you are. Now, look, I'm also not saying this is a bad thing, right? Because we all need support networks. We need significance. And what these types of groups do is they serve a purpose and they give us that network. But imagine you've gone to a property networking event. You've tried to speak to as many people as you can to get to know them. One of two things is generally going to happen. Firstly, they're going to spend the whole time speaking about themselves and what they're trying to achieve, right? Which is great. It's good to know. Or secondly, they've been on a training course and everyone's going around politely asking everyone else how they can help them, which of course is stupid, as no one can really help each other because everyone's just getting started and trying to achieve the same thing. And you've probably seen it as well. Every now and again, somebody with the same with some money to invest comes along and announces that they want to invest, and all of a sudden it's like sharks to a carcass in the water, and the desperate feeding frenzy starts. Whether you're on a social media forum or a networking event, it's pretty embarrassing when you see it, and when you get involved in it, it just totally damages your brand. Plus, the reality is, right, all this stuff is not going, to move the needle in any meaningful way at all. I want you to think of it like this. There's so many people out there who've been churned through the systems. There's so much noise. Everybody's shouting from the rooftops about, what they're doing and trying to create their own brand and image. There's just really no point competing, as you're never going to stand out. And so it just doesn't work. So we need to do things differently. We need to think differently. And rather than just jumping in with 99% of the people fighting for the scraps, we want to be in the 1% who are swimming in the blue waters, right? And putting their efforts into building a reputation in front of the right people in the right way. Because I can guarantee you that all that other stuff, right, getting around the networking circuit, uploading all those videos to Facebook groups that get 20 views and, last for a few hours before they decay, right, the guru's going to keep telling you this, and look, it's going to work for them because they've got big, large, established presences, so it's a different rule book. But for you, you need to do something different. I want you to get out of those red, shark-infested waters, right, get into that blue ocean. And by the way, this goes for everything in property. Where you're positioning yourself, where you're building your brand, where you're networking, where you're looking for deals. If we position ourselves in the 1% who are doing things differently, we are going to create success. Now let's get on to the hard way number 4, the final hard truth about investing in property. And that's many people, right? It's the real crux of success. Many people, the real reason that they're making property really hard for themselves is they're not focusing on cash flow. Look, still most people out there are teaching outdated strategies that don't work in the current market and times. I've been banging this drum for years now, that even when you're able to find deals, right, even when you're able to secure finance to actually buy them, if you are buying the wrong type of property or deal, then you're still going to end up with a liability that drags you down and actually makes your life worse. When I got started, it was all about below market value. Okay, you go out, you find a property, buy it below what it's worth and refinance the money out. But there's 2 big problems with this in the modern world. Number 1, we're in a hot market now. We have been for years, right? And who knows where the market's going to go, but we are still in one at the moment. And when you're in a hot market, it's tricky to find genuine below market value properties with the strategies that most people teach. And the second thing is, with a lot of the changes to things like tax, if you over leverage on the wrong type of property, you're going to put yourself into a negative cash flow position. And if you're like me, the entire point of property is to create an income stream that replaces your job and gives you control, freedom, and choice to live life on your terms. If you're not generating massive passive income, then honestly, you may as well just stay in a job, as it's impossible to live a life of any quality without cash flow, regardless of how much equity you have in a portfolio. Look, equity is not going to pay your mortgage. It's not going to put food on the table. It's not going to allow you to go on holiday whenever you want. It's not going to give you freedom, control, and choice. And so many of the strategies that are still taught will actually end you up with a liability. And I know this because I did it myself, right? It's what I ended up with. When I started, I was totally focused on finding below market value properties that I could buy cheap and recycle my cash from. But what this did was build a monster of a portfolio that was built on the wrong foundations, with the wrong type of property that's difficult to manage. And I'd focused on buying quantity and buying as much as possible. And honestly, right, most of the time I just felt burning half the portfolio down after another tenant had trashed a property or not paid the rent, and we had to spend loads on court action to evict them, and I was spending more time managing my managing agents than anything else. Okay, look, this is how I felt, right? I felt exhausted, I felt stressed, I felt trapped, and I know that many property investors feel the same way. But what I started to do, as I said earlier, was to transition that portfolio to a structure that works now and adapts to the market and legislation, is totally geared towards cash flow, which is the building blocks of a life of freedom. Now, honestly, when you approach property with the framework I'm about to teach you, it's going to give you the following. Number one, it's going to give you the ability to generate huge cash flow and enable you to live that life of freedom. Number two, you're going to be able to do it with a much smaller portfolio, meaning less stress and headaches in managing it. And number three, you're going to get there much more quickly. As rather than buying 30 properties, you can honestly generate the same, if not more, income from just 2 or 3. So rather than taking 10 years to build up a huge and hungry property portfolio, I'd much rather see you accelerate that than building a small, easy to manage and highly lucrative portfolio in the next 2 to 3 years. Look, honestly, size does not matter. This is the whole model I've switched to in my business, which has meant that I don't have to spend my time viewing lots of properties every day. I haven't had to spend any time, literally, since first lockdown in March 2020, I've barely done anything on Facebook at all. I've not been building my brand. I've not been trapping around networking events, be they real or virtual. It means I don't have to spend hours with my managing agents dealing with tenant issues, and it also means I don't have to spend all of my monthly income on replacing boilers or maintaining those properties. It gives that genuine life of freedom and control. And as I said earlier, over the last 12 months, since we went into that first lockdown in March 2020, I've only bought 2 properties, which were valued at over £1 million, generate over £10,000 worth of rent roll, and I only left the house once to do it. Plus, I didn't put out a single property-related social media post in the whole period. So look, if this is the sort of thing that gets you interested, if this is what you want to build a portfolio without any of your own cash that generates huge cash flow for you without having to flog yourself for 12 hours a day, viewing every crummy property on the market, develop a relationship with every estate agent, build a brand on social media that takes all your time, wake up at 4 a.m. and chant affirmations while meditating and building vision boards, the stuff that you see everybody talking about on social media. This is the one method that I know will work for you, as it's a framework, it's a methodology that anybody can use, regardless of your circumstances and resources, to build that property business in the right way. Trust me, you can do this, right? Using this method, I literally run my business from my laptop and totally choose when and where I'll work. I know that if I work 10 times as hard, I'll probably find more deals, right? I get it. And I might build my business more quickly, but I don't want to. It's not important to me. The important thing to me is about the quality of life, right? Having choice to spend time with my kids or relaxing. Definitely can't be bothered shouting about it all from the rooftops, which means I'm just quietly able to continue to accumulate and compound, bringing in tens of thousands of rent and adding hundreds of thousands a year to the value of my portfolio, with no one even knowing what I'm up to and letting everybody else fight it out on social media. So look, I'm going to tell you how this works on the big picture. Of course, look, if I was going to go through this method in minute detail, we'd be here for weeks. That's what I do with my coaching clients. But I'm going to teach you the broad strokes, and then in the end, if you want to find out more about how it could work for you, I'll invite you to the next steps. So here it is, team. So it's called the AAA method, and it's obviously got 3 parts to it. Okay, the first A in the AAA method is acquire. How to go out and find and purchase, right, those deals. Those deals are going to work for us. They're going to create cash flow, okay, and are going to do it in a way that means we don't leave money in. The second bit is add value. This is so key to creating momentum. If we don't get momentum, okay, we're going to be parking cash, whether it's your own cash, whether it's your investor's cash, right? If we cannot add value and recycle, then you're going to hit a brick wall of progress. And then finally, asset income. The final A is asset income. We must be able to generate income from that asset, or we'll have no cash flow, and that will mean we have none of that freedom, choice, and control. Now, get all of these 3 elements, right, and you will create property alchemy. Literally, there is no other asset class like it, how we can create money out of thin air using property. And I'm going to show you with a couple of case studies how we actually do that and the amount. And we're talking large figures here, right? We're talking large amounts of equity we can create out of thin air. We're talking about how we can recycle cash out of thin air and how we can create cash flow out of thin air. Okay, it's super cool. So let's go through each of these steps in a little bit more detail. So we're going to start with acquire. You can see there's the 3 S's of acquiring. We need to be able to source property. That means we have to be able to find it. We have to generate deal flow. And this is where most people just fail at the first hurdle, right? Because their version of sourcing property is just going out and viewing everything on the market. That's not smart. Okay, we have several methods we call smart sourcing techniques that we teach our coaching clients. When we find property that's going to work for us, we need to be able to structure them in a way, okay, that's going to create cash flow. That's going to mean we can actually get into the deal depending on what our resources are, and create extra equity. So we need to structure those correctly. And there's loads of ways we can do this. Straight purchase is just one. We can get creative. We can go no money down. We can do it using, for example, elements of vendor finance. So the people selling the properties can help us get into these things. Okay, we can do it with other people's money, structure it with other people's money. And finally, to get all this right, and now here's a key one, and I know this sounds strange to say, but part of the acquisition process is securing deals correctly. If we secure these deals incorrectly, okay, you're going to have massive issues down the line. I've seen it happen. I've invested my own money into deals that were secured incorrectly, and it's led to the entire deal breaking down and people losing huge sums of money, right, because of issues, omissions, right at the beginning in how paperwork's been done and how things have been secured correctly. Okay, but what I want to zoom in really is that sourcing element, because this is something that you can go away tomorrow, right, and start putting into practice. How do we source property? Now, I want you to think about building a machine that is out there and it's hoovering up the very best property deals that are in your area, okay? And it works by you set the criteria you're looking for. Now, look, if you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to be able to find it. And that's what most people do. They just go scattergun, right? They blitz. They try and see everything and go, oh, how am I going to make this into a deal? No, we need to have very specific criteria that you are looking for, something that is a deal for you. And then we'll feed this into the property machine. And out the other end of it will come pre-qualified deals that fit your criteria. And this gets away from all that hustle and grind, okay? It gets away from having to develop all these relationships with agents. It gets away from having to view all these properties. You're just going to sit back, okay, and for no more than an hour's worth of work a day, see what's coming out of your property machine. And then when you find it, okay, then you can start using your knowledge, your skill set, your tools that you're going to learn to structure those deals in a way that means you can acquire them with as little of your own money, if not none of your own money, okay? Again, either using other people's money, using creative, no money down strategies, working with vendors, okay? We're going to structure them to be able to acquire and start cash flowing as soon as possible. And of course, we then need to secure those using the right legals, using the right forms, using the right paperwork to make sure you hang on to these incredible deals. Look, I want to show you the property machine, the sourcing machine in action. This is one of the 2 properties that I spoke about earlier that we bought over lockdown, that I bought over lockdown. Okay, it's a 14-bed bed and breakfast plus owner's accommodation in the city centre of Chester. Okay, it's prime residential area. You can see that this property had been on the market, and this was just an open market. You can see this is actually an auction for offers over £950,000. Okay, this had actually been on the market for quite a long time. And when we found it, when the machine found it, and I'd set the machine up for certain criteria, and it found this property, okay, I also found out that there'd been multiple offers already submitted on this. Loads of people have tried to buy it, okay? People who have put a multitude of different ideas in front of the vendor. But here's the thing, okay? One phone call that I made directly to the vendor revealed the trigger that nobody else had noticed. I think the vendor said to me they'd had 30 offers in this, all right, and none of them had actually listened to the vendor and what the vendor wanted. And one simple trigger word led to me being able to send one targeted letter to the owner, all right? This is one of our smart sourcing techniques, using some keywords that appealed to the motivation of that vendor, and we secured the purchase for £760,000. Okay, that's significantly below what the property had been marketed for. Not only that, we managed to secure this and structure this without putting any additional cash into our property business. we're able to effectively secure this from other assets. The deposit for this property was secured against other assets. And also, crucially, when we go into that structure element, we managed to structure it so there's a deferred element of this purchase from the seller. So actually, we didn't even pay the seller all of the money up front. And that was key to making this deal work for us. Nobody else had done this. Nobody else had thought of it, okay? And we were able to negotiate this with the vendor. If we hadn't have done this, the deal would not have worked with the figures. In a little bit, I'm also going to show you how the numbers worked in terms of cash flow, but I want to get on to the asset, step 3, the asset income, before we do that. So moving on to step 2, which is adding value. Okay, adding value. Now here is where people think, and still this is what I hear all the time, we have to buy stuff below market value. Okay, we have to buy it below what it's actually worth. This is not true. There are multiple ways of adding value to property. And again, why do we need to add value? If we can add value, this is where the alchemy really happens, right? If we can raise the value of something by more than what we're putting into it, then we have the ability, using mortgages, using leverage, to pull our cash out, right? And we keep that added equity in the property. We pull our cash out and recycle it into the next one. By being able to do this, we get momentum, and we can take one pot of money. It doesn't even have to be yours, right? It can be an investor's pot of money, and we can roll it from property to property to property. But to do that, we have to be able to add value. It's the biggest thing that people fall over with when their business grinds to a halt and they lose all momentum. But there's the ABC of adding value. So number 1, add, okay? The A stands for add. This could be add units, add square footage. We could go up, we could go down, we could go sideways, we could split into multiple titles. Okay, this is a great way in certain areas to be able to add value. Of course, we do have the B, which is below market value. Even though it's rare, there are still some below market value, genuine below market value deals out there through things like distressed sellers, right? People just need to get rid of it for whatever reason. In a hot market, much more difficult to find. I'm not saying they're not there. Again, we might well go into a market in the future which is a hard market again, a recession style market where below market value is everywhere, but we have to have other tools in our kit. And my favorite one is commercial. Okay, we've got multiple mechanisms using commercial techniques to add value. Now, this could be getting a property valued on a commercial valuation. By rather than getting it valued on its bricks and mortar, we can get it valued on a multiple of its rental income. And in certain areas of the country, not all, but certain, this will lead to higher commercial valuations than the bricks and mortar. Again, adding the value, meaning we can recycle our cash. Or we can look at things like shuffling paperwork around, my personal favorite, because this involves absolutely no risk, no effort. It's literally sitting down, looking at the paperwork and altering that paperwork to add value. This is why the structure and secure side on Acquire is so important to get this right. I'm going to show you an example now, right, of how we were able to do this on the second property that I bought over lockdown. This is again in Chester. This is within the Chester city centre walls. It's prime real estate, very expensive area. There's not a lot of city centre property within the city walls in Chester. It's one of those small places. So this is actually a mixed use building. We've got the hairdresser at the bottom, which is the Diva. That's a hairdresser, and then we've got 5 flats above it. So over lockdown, we agreed the purchase price of this property at £340,000. Now, the reason that we were able to agree this at such a low amount was that the landlord, who sadly was, well, the company was the landlord was a company. One of the shareholders had sadly passed away. They were looking to exit it. They were in leases, so they were renting out the hairdresser and the flats in very low leases, which meant to them the property was worth a certain amount. But when you know what you're doing and you understand commercial valuations, you're able to re-engineer that, okay, to change those leases or to increase those leases. And again, you need to know what you're doing. So if you get it wrong, you can end up in a real pickle with this. But when you know what you're doing and how it all works, right, it's not difficult to renegotiate those leases or change those leases. And using that strategy, we actually got it valued for refinance at £435,000. Okay, so we agreed the purchase price at £340,000, and we had it valued for refinance before we even bought it, valued for a refinance at £435,000. Now, as another cherry on top with this particular deal, again, if we go back to step 1, acquire, this is where we need to structure and secure properly, okay, because we're using corporate structures in the acquisition of this, and we're buying the company rather than buying the property. I can teach you all this, by the way. I don't want to blow your mind too much, okay? These are actually very simple mechanisms to use. But because the previous vendors had bought it so long ago for such a small amount of money, there was a capital gain sitting in their company. Now, because I'm buying the company, I'm also going to buy that capital gain. So we actually reduced the purchase price further by the capital gain, which meant we were not able to knock another £60,000 off the purchase price. So we actually bought this building, which, just to remind you, we've had it valued 4 weeks before we bought it at 435 grand, and we actually bought it for £280,000 cash due to this tax liability. Okay, with the refinance already in place. Refinance day one, 245,000. So that had already been agreed before we bought it. So we bought it, completed the transaction. Then the bank lent us 245 grand back on it, meaning only £35,000 was left in this property. Okay, which incidentally is investor cash. Can you imagine buying a £435,000 property in the middle of Chester? Okay, and on the day after you buy it, refinance it, you only leave 35 grand in, and we'll talk about the rent roll in the next step, right? We'll have a look at we'll continue the case study. Just imagine how many of those you need to create financial freedom. Literally added £95,000 equity on day one by changing the leases. Okay, so that's adding value. You can see there's many more ways to add value than just buying things below market value. But we need to understand those strategies. We need to understand how to execute them. And then finally is asset income. If we can't generate cash flow from these things, okay, we may as well go and get a job. Honestly, cash flow is everything in property. Otherwise, you don't have a life. So we need to be able to, number one, rent it. So we need to understand the areas, okay, that we're buying. We need to know there's a demand, and what I do now is I almost have a end client, an end customer in mind to take over these properties that I buy. You know, you remember earlier on when I showed those screenshots of large chunks of rent coming in on a monthly basis. It's because I prefer to rent out to organizations. So anyway, we need to be able to rent. We need to be able to refinance. Again, if we structure and secure things incorrectly, it's going to make our refinance very difficult. We need to be able to pull that money out to get momentum. And we need to ensure that we understand the return we're getting meets our criteria. Now, on my Property Cashflow Accelerator program, which I work with my coaching clients, we go into returns very deeply to understand what the different types of return are and why you need to understand return on investment or return on capital employed. I'm not going to go into it now, but when you're working with your own money, but more importantly, working with investor money, if you understand this very simple concept of return on capital employed, and you know what investors want from their capital, right? It makes the whole thing so simple, because all you need to do is find deals that meet that and slightly exceed it. And anything that your investor is exceeded from what your investor wants is yours to keep. It's as simple as that. So we need to be able to generate asset income. So I just want to go through the case studies that I just showed you, okay, to show you how these cash flow. So 86 Watergate Street, that place in Chester, which is the hairdressers and the 5 flats. These 5 flats, they rent at £3,000 per month, and the hairdresser rents at £700 per month. So the total rent roll on that building is £3,700 per month. Now, costs, we're going to have costs. So I've illustrated this as an interest-only mortgage at 3%, which is representative of what you can get out from a mortgage lender. I've gone interest-only because, of course, you might be paying a capital and repayment mortgage, but then you're paying off elements of the capital. So the interest would be £612 on the mortgage that we have on this. There's no voids or no maintenance, okay, nothing. We have these leased out to corporate clients on FRI. That's fully repairing and insuring leases. It means they insure the building. Any damage that happens, they fix it. Section 24, I'm not going to go into that too much here. This is the new government tax. If you hold things in your own name, they're basically going to tax you on losses potentially, because you can't offset your mortgage interest. But because this is done in a corporate structure, there's none of that. So net is just over £3,000 a month. Net going into the bank account every single month. Now, that's £36,000 a year. Okay, it's almost £40,000 a year profit from one building. If you remember, when I said we left 35 grand of money in this, that means in the first year, all of that money comes back, right? And then you've got all your money out, and it's effectively an infinite return going on, right? Can you imagine how many of these you need to replace your income, okay, or to create that life of freedom? You don't need a lot. Let's look at the Kings, right? This is the B&B. This is the 14-bed B&B with the owner's accommodation in it. 14 rooms. They rent out at £7,000 per month. So it's £500 a month each per room. Okay, they're all ensuite rooms, 14 ensuite rooms. There's actually an office in there as well, which we, as a bonus, we didn't even realise this when we bought it. There's another room in there, which wasn't covered over under something called an HMO license. So we're only allowed to rent 14 rooms out per the HMO, but there's also a separate self-contained office, which we it was kind of a cherry on top, and we rented that out for £500 per month. And then the flat, the owner's accommodation, we use it as serviced accommodation, so it's just on Airbnb. And we're averaging more than that at the moment, but I've gone conservative, £1,500 per month. We're actually doing sort of £2.5 grand a month. Now I know while I record this, we're sort of in that summer post-lockdown hospitality and travel boom in the UK with staycations, nobody's going abroad. So that's probably a bit artificial. So I've gone conservative at £1,500 a month. That gives us a total rent roll of £9,000 per month. Of course, there are some costs. Now on this, it's difficult to work out just the interest because I'm actually on a portfolio mortgage, but it's £2,000 a month capital and repayment. We pay management fee. There's no business rates on it. We pay about £700 a month in utilities. We do cleaning. We have compliance. Look, it nets out at almost £5,000 a month. So these two properties alone, okay, are rent rolling about £12,000-13,000 a month. They are netting, that's pure profit in the pocket, at around about £8,000 per month profit. That's 100 grand a year profit from two properties that have been sourced with only leaving the house once over lockdown. So when we have these three together, I said we've got property alchemy, but we need to make sure we do all three elements right. Look, if we can acquire property, if we can find property and we can add value, but we're not able to rent it out, we're not going to have any income, right? It's a crippler on your life. If we can find property and we have the ability to rent it out, but we can't add value to it, we're going to have no momentum. We're going to lose all momentum and we're going to hit a brick wall with our business. And if we can, if we're good at adding value and we're going in an area that we can rent out, but we can't find anything, we've got no deals, we just got no business. We need all three of these. And this is the important thing. And you're probably asking right now, how do I achieve all three of those steps? Okay. And here it is. Here's the roadmap that you need to be following over the next 90 days. This is the same roadmap I use with my clients, with my coaching clients and mentoring clients. You can take it yourself, right? Which is why I'm giving you the slides, and go out and try and achieve it yourself. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is understand property. Number one is lay the foundations, right? This is all about mindset. It's about believing in yourself. It's about having a plan, okay? And it's about the skill set to be able to identify what a deal is, understand what you're looking for, understand what the numbers. There's a bit of theory we need to learn. It's not a lot. It's nothing complex here. Property is a fundamentally simple asset class, right? But so many people look at property through the wrong lens. And all I want to do is I want to shift that lens so you look at it how I look at property and understand what you're looking for. And then the second thing is we need to pick an area and pick that strategy. Remember at the beginning I said there is no one-size-fits-all strategy. You will go broke very quickly by following the gurus and doing exactly what they tell you to do, because a lot of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, it's not going to work in your area or for your resources. So we need to, or you need to, understand what you want to achieve, what strategy you're going to follow, and what area you're in. Then we need to build the machine. Okay, remember that schematic I showed you, the property machine. This is all about creating a systemized business, right, which reclaims your time. I don't want you to be playing the numbers. I don't want you to be hustling and grinding and flogging yourself, right? You need to build that machine where you're going to put a little bit of your time in and get the maximum output out the other end. Okay, it doesn't take long to do. Literally, we can put this together in hours. Then we're going to implement smart property sourcing. This is when the rubber hits the road. This is when we're going to go out, right, and start looking for those deals. Again, if we don't know what we're looking for, we're not going to find them. We have about 7 smart property sourcing techniques that I work with my clients to teach them and hold their hands as they implement it, which means you're going to start hoovering up those deals. Then, right, when we've started sourcing, we need to look at power positioning you for investment. Do this in the wrong place, you're wasting your time, right? Deposition yourself, you're making yourself into a brand liability. We need to understand your brand and put it in front of the right people at the right time to source investment. Step 6 is structure cash flowing deals. So your property machine is going to be bringing you stuff. Honestly, you can create a cash flowing deal out of pretty much anything. Okay, you just need to understand how to do it. I'm not going to say the vendor's going to sell it to you for that deal, but you can structure it as we're putting our offers out. Again, you have to know how to do it right. I see it so often that people structure things incorrectly and end up with a liability. And then when we've done all of that, I can assure you it's just a matter of time. We will agree the first property, and there's absolutely no reason why you cannot do this within 90 days of starting this process. I'm not going to say you are. I will not guarantee anything. There are no income claims here. But there is absolutely no reason that you cannot find, structure, and acquire your first, well, I say acquire, right? Solicitors conveyancing is going to take longer, but get that locked in within 90 days if you're doing things correctly. At the same time, you can see this road that's going through. Concurrently, we need to be building the right network. We need to be developing the right relationships, not the wrong relationships. We need to be seeing the properties that your smart property sourcing comes out, getting those offers in, exploding your authority, and all of that is going to accelerate your deal. So look, the real question is, at this point, is do you want to take the most amount of time and follow all of those old techniques of finding property deals, or do you want to spend your life glued to social media and going to networking events and creating networks that are just going to weigh you down? Do you want to build your portfolio the wrong ways, like I did at the beginning? Or do you want to spend the least amount of time and make the most amount of profit? Look, just understanding some of these principles is going to have a massive impact on your business. I want to just speak about something that happened with Ben, one of my mastermind clients. Without even leaving the mastermind room, we saved Ben £30,000 of tax on a property purchase. Again, right, this goes back to that element of the AAA method, which is the structure. I know it sounds boring, right? It's the unsexy side of it. But things like tax and structure and, corporate entities, right? These are the things that are going to make you 100 times more money than flogging yourself around. I can absolutely guarantee you that. Look, a smart, successful investor is always going to stay relevant in the current market, and they're going to invest in themselves to ensure they remain agile and ahead of the trends. I've been there, I've worked out the hard way, I've ground it out, I've spent weeks and weeks wasting my time being a busy fool, and even despite my success, built a property portfolio that was unmanageable. But by investing in myself, as well as the trial and error and bitter experience and tens of thousands of pounds worth of screwed up deals, I learned how to identify the real gems out there. I learned how to structure them correctly to produce cash flow. I learned all of the techniques there are to add value in every market, whether it's a boom market or a bust market or a recession, right? There are ways you can add value in every single market. And I learned how to build not just a portfolio, but a business that runs on autopilot, right? So I can actually have time freedom in my life. Look, I'll be upfront with you. The quickest way for you to go broke is to not invest in yourself. I am not saying that you can't go out and do these things yourself. I'm saying that you're going to accelerate your success by learning from those who have been and trodden before you. And I hear a lot of, sort of reasons or excuses from people why they won't invest in themselves. Like, I've not started yet, so I'll save up the money for my first deposit rather than investing. The amount of times I've gone to social media and somebody has said, look, why would you pay to go on a training course or get a mentor when you can just put that money into a deposit? Fine, give it a go, right? If you get it wrong, you're going to lose it all, and you're going to create a liability that will take years to come out of. I've done it, right? I've been there. Property, you can make big, but you can also lose big. I said earlier, just if I'd had a mentor when I was doing that small first development, right, when that builder ran away with 30 grand, I would have spent 20 grand for a half-hour session to learn how to structure those contracts correctly. Absolutely would have done. Because the biggest commodity, the most important commodity you have is time. You can spend 5 years working it out and making the mistakes like I did. Trust me, it's not a fun place. It's not a fun thing to go through. Another thing that people say, oh, I hate this, right? In the industry, I hear all the gurus saying this: ready, fire, aim. Just go and do it. Take massive action. I can't tell you how much I hate it. When people tell you just to take massive action and work out as you go along, I think it's honestly one of the worst pieces of advice you can get in property, as the numbers are so big. If you get it wrong, at best you'll tie up a huge amount of money, giving you a poor return, and at worst you'll simply lose hundreds of thousands. I have seen it happen. Okay, I've been in a development where somebody went ready, fire, aim. He went in without securing correctly, and he lost over £300,000. I mean, I've had my 1 million mistake. I've referenced it a couple of times already, and I've had plenty of others, trust me, in terms of builders doing things wrong, or contracts not wrong, or, investing in the wrong things. But that first development way back in 2014, I think it was, when I bought this property, it was an old commercial photographic studio. It's totally the wrong location. I went for planning to get 5 flats, and I put it in completely wrong, right? I tried to do it myself to save 500 quid on architect's fees, and it got knocked down from 5 to 3 flats because I did it wrong. I mean, that in itself probably cost £80,000. Okay, all of this severely impacted the end value. And then I had my builder who came in without a proper contract, took me for a ride, and spent 30k of my cash on motorbikes, holidays to Spain, and drugs. But the biggest thing was the stress of it, going through that for months, because property takes a long time, right? When something goes wrong, you're in that pain for months. It caused so many issues personally. I would have without a doubt paid 30k to a mentor to remove the stress. And look, it was at that point, actually, back in 2014, that I decided to invest in myself, as I knew I needed to learn how to do it properly. And since then, look, since I invested that money, I just carry on buying great deals, like the one I talked to you about, like the two we bought over lockdown, like big new build developments, like these commercial to residential conversions, like large grade 2 listed developments in the middle of Chester, even just blocks of flats and commercial mixed-use buildings. These all pump out huge amounts of money. And if I'd known how to do it when I got started, right, I know categorically that in 10, 15, 20 years' time, I would be millions of pounds better off. Because when you get on that compound curve, I'm going to talk about compound curve in just a little bit, right? The quicker you get on it, the quicker that's going to accelerate for you. And I want to ask you, how much money have you made in the last 12 months outside of your job? Maybe not even outside your job, just in your job, right? How much have you earned over the last 12 months in your job? How much should you have made in the last 12 months if you had known the things that I've told you on this training? Okay, if you had started 12 months ago, how much could you have earned already? And I mentioned the compound interest curve. Look, you can do it. It's just when you it's just when are you going to get started and get yourself on this red curve? Look at it in the future. If you start right now, you're accelerating the time until you're achieving total freedom and financial opulence. The quicker you get on the curve, the quicker you get to the stage where that red line is going vertical. I wish I started this in my 20s. I honestly do. Please don't be the person who sits on the fence and thinks, I've got no money, so I can't get into property. You absolutely can. Please don't be the person who just says, hey, look, I'm too busy with this. You're not. This does not take huge amounts of your time. I spend no more than 2 or 3 hours a week on my property business. You know, what I always say is if you've got time and money, you're absolutely golden, right? I can get results with you. If you've got money but no time, you're also golden. I can get results. If you've got time but no money, you'll get results, right? The only people where it becomes slightly tricky is if you've got absolutely no time and absolutely no money. It's going to be tricky unless you can partner with somebody. But I'm going to ask you to be honest with yourself. It's always easy to make an excuse and say, look, I've got no time. But let me just put this to you. For everybody who sits here and says, I've got no time to do this, can I just ask how much time you spend watching Netflix or playing computer games or sitting in the pub? You know, can we take 5 hours of that a week, 10 hours of that a week and put it into growing a property business? Honestly, I know you can. And, you know, I just want you to ask yourself what one deal will do for you. Just one deal. Okay, remember this 86 Watergate Street deal in Chester. I went through it already. Gives me over £3,000 net profit per month. That's almost £40,000 a year. And it also created £95,000 equity on day one. How many of these do you need to change your life? Look, if I told you that every year you could add 40k to your income by just acquiring one deal, what would that be worth to you? And look, this is how I look at it, right? This is how I look at income. I break it down into chunks. I don't know if you've watched the film About a Boy, but there's a scene in it where Hugh Grant is talking about his time chunks. You know, what is it like? Watching Countdown, 1 chunk. Having a bath, 2 chunks. Going to the pub, 4 chunks. So I look at each addition to my portfolio as a real-time chunk of income. So one property pays for my mortgage. The second property pays for the cars that I drive. The third property pays for my kids' school fees. Okay, the fourth property pays for all my holidays. And that's how I want you to look at it. So you're incentivized to go out and carry on accumulating and compounding. And in 3, 4, 5 years' time, when you hit financial opulence, okay, you'll look back and go, that wasn't that difficult. So by not getting on the ladder correctly and not doing it now, you're missing the opportunity, not because you don't have the money, resources, skill, but simply because you don't have that system you can use to make this happen for yourself. Or maybe you did, but you didn't find the money. And something that I say with confidence is there's one common theme of successful investors, and that's they have the ability to find the money to get started. They did what it took. Look, I did. I remember begging and borrowing and stealing to get into property and to learn how to do it properly. You know, I remember taking out a loan from my parents to go on my first property training course. I've done loans, I've put things on credit cards, I've gone into debt, but it's all good debt, right? A lot of people think debt is bad. It is if you take a credit card and put a Ferrari on it, it's a depreciating asset, right? If you put a loan, get a loan out or put something out, you know, that invests in yourself and is going to return for you for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, okay, that is good debt. This has all gone to invest in myself and my portfolio. It's all come back many, many times over, right? And I want you to be resourceful over thinking you have the resources right now. Look, nobody has the resources when they get started. When I got started, I didn't have millions of pounds in the bank. I didn't have hundreds of thousands. I didn't even have tens of thousands of pounds in the bank. Right? I didn't have anything. And I've managed to do over 10 million pounds worth of property transactions in 10 years. Okay, nobody has resources when they get started, but they are resourceful. And so I want you to ask how resourceful you are and what's the opportunity cost right now of not moving forward and building your own legacy, because there is a solution here. And look, that's not copying what the gurus are doing or teaching. Okay, it's not having to save for ages and tying up all your cash in mediocre investments. It's not slogging around the networking and social media circuit. And it's certainly not using out-of-date and irrelevant strategies that's going to create a liability for you. So look, I know a lot of people are going to be sitting on the webinar and say, but what if it doesn't work, Rob? And I get that. Maybe you tried some of the things we've spoken about already, but the reality is you're here right now because what you're doing is not working. So what's the answer? The answer is that, honestly, anybody can get started in property and build massive passive income streams and compound their wealth by using the right method and systems. And what you need is a methodology I've detailed today to make sure you find the right properties for you, are able to acquire them, to gain momentum and create you cash flow. So look, here's how we can fix this fast for you. And you probably picked up by now that I'm big into action takers and people who really want to make a difference in their lives. And so I'd like to give you the opportunity to leverage what I've learned through the process of investing in over 8 figures of property. Because look, I've done it all the wrong way. I've learned it all the hard way. But I've now generated many tens of thousands of pounds of property income every single month. And so I know a few things about property and I know what I'm talking about. So here's what we're going to do, right? What I want to do is set up a totally free how to replace your income using the AAA method call. This is totally complimentary. This is totally zero risk to you. And we're going to get on the phone and it's either going to be with myself or my partner, Nick, who is equally, if not more successful in property. And look, I know you've heard my voice over the last 60 minutes or so. I'll walk you through in a second the process of how you book. But when you do book, you'll see an option to book with me or an option to book with Nick. I want you to know that Nick has got a portfolio that's larger than mine. It probably cash flows more. He works with huge amounts of international clients for sourcing them UK property, as well as owning letting agencies as well. So Nick knows his stuff, okay? So you can select the call with either myself or Nick. And what we're going to do on that call is we're going to outline for you the exact blueprint that you can use to build your own high cash flowing property portfolio. We'll do that by conducting an audit of what's holding you back now and what resources you already have at your disposal, be that money, be that time, be that experience, be that network, to overcome those barriers. So at the end of the call, you're going to leave it with a 12-month blueprint. You can walk away and implement it yourself, right, to start and grow your own cash flowing property portfolio. Now at this stage, I want to clarify this is not a sales call. I know there's lots of people who worry about this, okay? It's a breakthrough call where we're just going to help you in a massive way. And I know at the end, people get worried, look, what's the pitch? Is it going to be a massive high-pressure sales pitch? Look, there is not going to be a huge high-pressure sales pitch at the end of this call, okay? Here's what we're going to do. So you're going to come onto the call. Before you do, you're going to fill out an application form. I'll show you how to do it in a sec with some questions that's going to help us, that's me and Nick, prepare for the call. So we're able to tailor this to you, right? We're going to show you why what you're doing right now is not working and give you an exact step-by-step game plan to go forward. And then at the end of that call, if we think that you're the right fit for us and we think we can help you and it's something you want to hear about, at the end of the call, we'll say this. Would you like our help to implement this blueprint? That's it. Okay, it doesn't get much more high pressure than that. And you'll either say yes and come on as a coaching client of ours, or no, and you'll leave with the blueprint and you will implement it yourself. However, look, I want to be really genuine about this. We only bring on a select few clients every month. Myself and Nick, we do not run a training company, okay? We have mentees, we have coaching clients, but we are not a big guru-based training company. So we just don't have the capacity and the infrastructure to work with hundreds and hundreds of people. So we're only going to work with people we are 100% sure we can get results with. When you come onto the call, it might just not be the right time for you. So we want to check that you're right for us, because if we bring you onto a coaching program and you're not going to get the results, it just doesn't work for anybody, because you'll get frustrated with us. We'll probably get frustrated with you. It doesn't make anybody look good. So we only want to work with people that we know we can get results with. So on the call, look, if at the end of it we don't invite you onto the next step, that's fine. Please don't get mad or upset with us if we don't invite you to join the coaching program at the end. And that means, at the end of the call, two things are going to happen. One, we'll have had a good time on the call. You're going to have a load of value and you leave with this blueprint in your hand. Or two, you come on as a client of ours and we'll hold your hand through the whole process, and help you grow your own cash flowing property portfolio. So I just want to ask you, what is the worst thing that could happen? It's an absolute no-brainer. And just to make it even easier for you to book this call, right? For everybody who books a call, I'm going to give you lifetime access to our property cash flow Kickstarter program. Okay, this is a program we used to sell for £97. I'm just going to duck out of this presentation for a second. I'm just going to show this to you. Okay, here we go. Let's just put this up here. Here it is. Okay, it's all online. You'll just get an online login to it. We've got lots of videos, training videos. Sorry, that's probably going to start playing now.
Hello, friends. It's Rob back.
Let me turn it off. We're going to go through the different strategies. We're going to give you an overview of everything you can do, how to start property sourcing, structuring your deals, okay, before we talk to the next steps. And actually, whilst I'm out of the PowerPoint presentation, I just want to also work with you. So by the way, you will get access to this full life just by booking that call with us, okay? Even if you work with us afterwards or not, you just get access to that. It's going to give you a great background as to how our methods work and what our approach is. So if you'd like to book that call with us, and there should be by now a button on the screen that you can use to click through to our diary and book in. When you press that button, you're going to see something that looks like this. It might not look exactly like this because you'll probably see this diary embedded on another page, but it could just look like this. You'll be able to choose from me or Nick. This is my diary. All you need to do is pick the time and the date that you want. Put your details in. I'll just make mine up. Oh, in fact, I don't even need to do that. And then beneath that, so step one is put your details in, right? Step two is your discovery questionnaire, okay? So we need you to fill out this very short questionnaire. And this is really important. As I said, we only work with people we can help, okay? So we need to understand where you are, what you're trying to achieve. And this prepares us, allows us to prepare for our call so we can actually give you value on that call, okay? You need to fill out this discovery questionnaire. If you don't, we're not going to get on the call with you. So please do fill out this questionnaire, okay? It's as simple as that. After you filled it out, you completed your appointment, that will send you a confirmation, okay? The confirmation email, I suggest you put the time into your diary. I will probably send you a text message just 5 minutes before to make sure you are ready for the call. And that's it. We'll get on the call and we'll map out that blueprint for you. It's literally as simple as that. Right, let me just go back into here. So I think, without a doubt, taking this call, right, is the single most important thing you can do right now. It's going to be about 45 minutes, okay? So it's shorter than going to a networking event. And it's certainly more important than spending, 20, 30 quid and hanging out at a property networking event. It's more important than spending 45 minutes on Rightmove looking for your next deal, right? It's more important than waking up early and meditating or creating a vision board, okay? This is proper action where you're going to walk away with a plan of what you need to do to land those high cash flowing property deals. I'm going to show you on it how you can generate that six-figure income from property, okay? Really, this is the only thing you need to do now to get on track, to get it right and make sure you're doing the right strategy for you. So please do find that button. Please do book into our diary. There are very limited slots. As I said, myself and Nick, we both run other businesses. We're both in property. We both have, lots of commitments that we do. So we can only offer a certain amount of slots every week. So please don't miss out. Press the button, find your slot now, book in. The thing says click the button below. It might be below, it might be to the side. I'm not sure exactly on the screen, depending what system you're on, you'll see that button. But look, do it as soon as possible, because in my experience, and I'm just going to be very upfront with you here. In my experience, those who book in within 24 hours of this training, being on this training, are the people who get the best results. The more info you put on the call, on the questionnaire, the more we can tailor the call for you. As I said, if you don't fill out the questionnaire, we won't take the call, so make sure you do it accurately. And at the end of that session, again, as I said, if we're a good fit and there's a mutual fit and we feel we can get results with you, we'll talk to you about the next steps. Look, there's a window of opportunity where if you get this together, right, if you take that action, you'll be making 100K a year plus within a few years. Look, you'll get my assistance. You'll also get Nick's assistance. We'll walk you through the entire thing. I'm going to leave you to it now. This is your last chance. I'll probably send a follow-up email to give you that opportunity to book in. And as you're at this stage of the training, you'll also get the slides. You'll get the deal analyzer. Remember, if you book in for the call, we'll send you that access to our digital program, the Property Cashflow Kickstarter. Gives you an overview of what we're doing. Press the button, book in, come prepared to the call. We'll map out a plan, and at the end of it, if we think we're a good fit, we'll talk about the next steps. And I look forward to working with you over the coming weeks, months, and indeed years to help you grow your own legacy and financial freedom.